Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We are doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And stay tuned tonight at 6 for Winning with Winans. I'll be back on the air at 6 with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans right here. Right now, you got Mottek On Money. Live on the air of 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Record-shattering day for stocks as we kick off the new week. Stocks climbing to record highs on promising signs that a U.S.-China trade deal is shaping up, and that will cap President Trump's long-awaited meeting with the Chinese leader later this week. The president today received a royal welcome in Japan, the latest leg of his 5-day Asia trip, which he says he hopes to cap with a deal on trade with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, the president making his longest journey abroad since taking office, announcing a flurry of deals on trade and critical minerals with 4 Southeast Asian nations during the first stop in Malaysia over the weekend, and set to meet with the Chinese leader in South Korea on Thursday. President Trump said today that Washington and Beijing were poised to come away with a trade deal ahead of his expected meeting with the Chinese leader. He spoke aboard Air Force One on the way to Japan from Malaysia. The president added that he could sign a final deal on TikTok as early as Thursday, according to CNBC. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 337 points. The S&P 500 of 83, NASDAQ of 433, all record highs across the board here today. Wall Street's mood upbeat as the earnings season continues. Also, it's a big week with the Federal Reserve making a big announcement after a big meeting. The Federal Reserve's interest rate decision will be coming out this week as well, and it's widely expected the Fed will be cutting short-term rates, with the Fed funds rate expected to take another 0.25% cut. That'll impact the prime lending rate, which impacts business and consumer loans. The Mag 7 names back in focus. We see Microsoft, Alphabet, Google, Meta all set to report third-quarter earnings results on Wednesday. Apple and Amazon scheduled a day later. Shares of Amazon today closing higher on reports in the Wall Street Journal and Reuters that Amazon plans to cut up to 30,000 corporate jobs starting tomorrow. Qualcomm shares also higher today by about 20%. As the company announced it would accelerate its data center push with new chips, putting it in direct competition with NVIDIA and AMD. We'll take a closer look at that coming up. Whirlpool on the earnings front posting better than expected results after the market closed today, and the stock's up about 3% in after-hours trading. We'll talk China later this hour with China expert Gordon Chang, and Bitcoin also having a good day, rising above 115,000 today. And we'll talk Bitcoin later this hour with Jason Nelson, reporter at Decrypt Media at decrypt.co. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live now is top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, president and chief investment officer at Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com. Ken Winans, also a market historian and author of numerous books, including The Investment Atlas 1 and 2, Investment Atlas 3, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends, came out just in the past year. Also, he's a Forbes magazine contributor, so be sure to check out his latest articles. Most importantly, he's right here with us now, host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday evening at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KBC, and, of course, a great contributor to Mottek On Money for many years. And be sure to catch Winning with Winans in Las Vegas area as well. Ken Winans, welcome back to the studios here.
Hello, Frank. Well, you know what? I drove in today, and of course, I had that sticker shock when I came across the state line and saw what you folks pay for in gas.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. But, but here's the good news. With the way the markets are moving up, you guys can afford the gas because it's wonderful to see how the earnings are coming through pretty well. Now, I think we talked about it last week. This earnings season still has at least another 2 to 3 weeks to go. I think the real test is going to be going into early November, especially with the retailers. I think that's going to be the telltale sign about how good can we expect the holiday to look. And the way some of these retailers are looking right now, when you look at Walmart, TJX, they're really doing quite well.
And, we had that inflation reading on Friday, which came in better than expected, despite all this nervousness about tariffs and all that. And, of course, the market cheering the latest news on trade between the U.S. and China ahead of a big meeting this week. And then you have the Fed meeting this week. So a lot of moving parts this week.
And the other part of it, too, and, there's always these little bits and pieces of news that always catch my eye. The fact that Social Security just announced what the COLA increases would be, and it came in at the lowest point it's been in 4 years. I think it's coming in at something like 2.6%. So what does that mean? It means that labor costs going into next year, a lot of companies take a cue from that number. So you're going to look at labor costs being lower next year. You're looking at interest rates being lower next year. And you're certainly looking at earnings looking pretty darn good right now.
Yeah, COLA meaning the cost of living allowance, right? That impacts those on fixed income. The Social Security folks announcing a 2.8% benefit increase for our friends listening who rely on that. What do you expect, or do you expect any surprises this week when we hear from the Federal Reserve when Jerome Powell gives one of his last news conferences?
Yeah, many people don't know this. Chairman Powell's out next May. His term is up, and it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that the president has already made his next pick. But with that being said, no, the Fed is still very concerned that there's a softening of the economy. Obviously, hey, the government shut down. One of the reasons I drove today was that I just wasn't real comfortable with the idea that I might get stranded at a local airport or find that my flights are delayed just strictly because air traffic controllers are not being paid right now. So I think that that is going to put the crux on the Fed to say we have to keep dropping rates.
All right, so the Federal Reserve will be in focus, and also a lot of discussion about who's going to be the next Fed chair. Looks like there's a list out there, and we had a chance to take a look at that. But any thoughts on who might make the cut? Looks like there was one report said that the 5 people on the list include former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, and current Fed Governor Chris Waller. 3 names previously mentioned by President Trump, who will make ultimately the final decision. And the 2 others on Treasury Secretary Bessent's short list is being reported. Another Fed Governor, Michelle Bowman, who also serves as the central bank's top bank regulator, and BlackRock fixed income chief investment officer Rick Reeder. Any favorites there, Ken White?
You know what, I'm going to throw one other name out there. For anybody who's followed the last 2 administrations of Trump, I'm going to throw in Peter Navarro. I think that he's a Harvard-trained economist. He could easily be on that list. He's been very loyal to the president, and I just would not surprise me to see him in that list.
Isn't that something? Remember, used to debate him on this program years ago.
You and I both did a lot of times. And, you know, it's just something that I think President Trump looks at loyalty, and he looks at people who are consistent in their beliefs, and certainly Peter Navarro fits that mode. Well,
thanks for reminding me. We're going to have to try to get him back on the program here. He's certainly taken another high-profile role in the second Trump administration after going to jail after the first one. Isn't that something?
It's absolutely crazy.
Yep.
Frank, I was going to bring a couple other things I think everybody in the audience should be aware of. Again, with with rates coming down, money market accounts, everybody's almost shocked how fast money market rates have come down. People were comfortable with it for almost 2 years. They've come down fast. People are scrambling right now to get money invested, and also the fact that the U.S. market is doing so much better than a lot of the foreign markets. When you look at the chaos in places like France or Japan just had a big upheaval in their government, people are finding that maybe the U.S. isn't that bad of a play when you think about what's going on.
All right, and of course, crypto has been all over the place lately. Looks like crypto folks feeling a bit better as we start the new week here after kind of a stomach-churning week or two. Bitcoin got back to around 115,000. It's about 114.5 here at last check. Ethereum is back above 4,100. Solana close to 200. Doge at 20 cents. So you put your crypto hat on for just a second here. Ken, what are your thoughts about the latest action here?
Well, real quick on Doge, I was on the 10 freeway driving here, and there's somebody who says we take payment in Dogecoin. So you're clearly not alone, Frank.
Got your attention.
It sure did. I thought about you immediately. Here's the thing. One of the great things about your show, you don't only talk about crypto, you also talk about commodities. You have big shifts going on right now. And I think if you're trying to figure out crypto, you need to remember that a lot of the stable coins, they're all backed on commodities. So I think, again, when you see what's going on with gold, silver, cattle, and you look at all these other things going on, I don't think it's a big surprise that finally crypto's kind of coming back to life again. It's still very much trend is your friend. Yes, maybe it went sideways for a couple of months, but it's clearly moving up. Money's being reallocated there. And then I've been asked quite a bit about the pullback in gold, silver, and platinum. I would just say all those metals had ran too far, too fast. I still think the trend is your friend, and you want to look for things to step into that are not just necessarily stocks.
Yeah, analog gold, as we call it here, compared to digital gold, cryptos, analog gold went up to around 4,400 and then had that washout about a week or so ago, is still holding above 4,000. What do you see ahead on where gold goes from here?
You know, the gold typically does well during the holiday season. Also, in the country of India, they had just had a huge holiday. Gold is a very popular thing to give, especially certain members of a family, weddings or anything else. They're very, very big on gold. Here's the point. I think jewelry is going to do very well this holiday season. I think you're fine on it, but also keep in mind, you have a lot of things going on around the world with central banks buying gold. You know, companies are buying it. AI companies, you want to talk about all these AI chips? Go look at how much metal has to go into these chips. So again, there's a lot of reasons to think that this run in gold and silver is not over.
Right, the holiday in India, Diwali, and I saw that one report, you probably saw it too, that Indians splurge up to $11 billion on gold this Diwali. Happy Diwali to all celebrating out there.
Absolutely. And then you throw on top of that, too, that, you know, the countries around the world, even if they're not Christian countries, they typically celebrate Christmas. It's a big commercial time. So I don't see any reason at all to necessarily back away from gold and silver as trades. But, Frank, last thing, we know these are commodities. They're very volatile. You got to be careful.
Speaking of commodities, good old oil has been bouncing around, moved above $60 a barrel recently, and regarding the in reaction to the Russian sanctions, and of course a lot of interest in what's happening in the Caribbean these days, with the U.S. military power being exerted in the Caribbean, possibly ultimately directed at Venezuela. What are your thoughts on where oil goes from here in all this?
Here's the thing. I think it's going to come down to how the shipping lanes are going forward. If you are having tankers still being attacked in the Red Sea or around the Horn of Africa, you might find there will be some disruptions. Hey, this Category 5 hurricane could have a massive disruption on oil and tankers throughout the Gulf of America, as we're now calling it, and certainly around the eastern seaboard. But Frank, I'll also throw in there, since we're talking about oil, let's also talk about natural gas. People are beginning to think this might be a cold winter. I mean, I was actually really surprised to see snow on the local mountains around Southern California. This time of year, that's very unusual. So natural gas could get pretty expensive.
All right. Well, everything's expensive here, of course, as soon as you cross that border. So you had a frontline view of everything that's going on, having just driven in from Las Vegas today. So my hat's off to you for doing that. And certainly, despite the drop in oil prices this year, we're paying higher prices than we were paying a year ago here in California, has been noted numerous times here. We're probably paying about 10 cents a gallon higher than a year ago. Diesel, I believe, is about 20 cents a gallon higher than where it was a year ago. So no relief here in California. Well,
and unfortunately, a lot of it's just tied to the oil logistics of California. When you're talking about not opening new refinery capability, the pipelines here are old. Everything is old. Nobody's going to open new gas stations here. So you're having shrinking everything. That means that energy prices get more expensive. And then I hate to say it, Frank, just good old-fashioned taxes. I mean, they're trying to fix the roads here. They're desperate to get money to do it.
Yeah. And what about the seasonal thing regarding natural gas this time of the year because of the, as you mentioned, the cold winter expected? Are you thinking about doing any of these option plays or these ETFs that play both sides of natural gas prices, for example?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There's very interesting strategies you can do with options, but they are not for the faint of heart. You have to know what you're doing. I would just suggest that for people who feel that maybe energy is getting ready to turn, take a look at companies that are combined oil and natural gas companies. Personally, I'd look at the pipelines. They usually throw off a pretty nice dividend, and they're just not as volatile as the exploration plays.
All right. What about the Mag 7, NVIDIA, looks like at a record high here, up more than 5 at 191 and change here.
Absolutely.
Apple also up there, up 6 to 268 and change.
Well, and I'm going to say the 7.5. I'm going to also throw Broadcom in there, AVGO, which has been one of my holdings. I've been very happy with it. Those are AI plays. Here's the thing. I've not been a big fan of Apple throughout the last year and a half or so, because obviously it had some real lagging situations. But with the new iPhone coming out, and you're coming out right during the holiday season, and I don't know about you, Frank, I think you probably use an Apple phone as well. It's amazing that when a new phone comes out, suddenly the old phones don't quite work as well as they used to. And so maybe you have to go in and get a new one. I'm just saying they might do pretty well this holiday season.
Planned obsolescence, right?
Yeah, that's what they've called it.
That's right. That's right. Well, it looks like the 17 appears to be a success, and we see Apple moving higher again today. Anything else in the Mag 7 list? We see Amazon cutting jobs. That report came out late this afternoon, and looks like some of the earnings we'll be hearing from Apple on the earnings front as well, and looks like Amazon too. What about Amazon here ahead of the holiday season?
You know, in the case of Amazon, it is not so much what they're going to post for the last quarter. I want to know what their guidance is for the holidays and going into 2026, and especially if the tariffs had any effect on their ability to get a hold of products. Because remember, all the talk was we were going to have empty store shelves, we weren't going to have stuff. Well, that clearly hasn't happened. And so, again, is Amazon going to reconfirm that the logistics of the distribution channels are in place? We're going to find out very shortly.
All right. And at the beginning, you mentioned retailers. Of course, they'll be in focus as we get into the holiday season here. We're just about a week or so away from November, and that big election next week, too, by the way, which will be important here in California. But among the brick-and-mortar retailers now, any favorites as we head into the holiday season?
You know, I think you have to look at the companies that have figured out a way to bridge brick and mortar and still have the online presence. Obviously, Walmart comes in. They're the giant. I think you have to look at Costco. You look at TJX. Now, I will tell you the two retailers that I have been very popular on up until recently, the automotive parts retailers, mainly O'Reilly Automotive and AutoZone, both have really slowed down from a momentum standpoint. I think it's more of a valuation problem. They moved up so far, so fast compared to the other retailers. There's just a lot of moving around of people rebalancing their portfolios.
All right, and it looks like Walmart hit a record high recently. Macy's moving up a bit today to 19 and change. Any other retail names that you're looking at, and would you concentrate on the high end or the low end this time around?
You know, here's the thing. I think it actually all ends could actually do pretty well. If you're looking at the fact that, you know, the economy, okay, it depends on what statistic you're going to look at, but at least the companies are telling us people are spending money. And I think if you're going to look at interest rates coming down, which means credit card rates are going to come down, people will be inclined to go out and spend money and worrying about paying it off next year. So I would just also add one of my favorites. They're not really out here, but it's Casey's General Stores, which is symbols CASY. They're a convenience store throughout the Midwest and the South. Very, very well run company. A favorite of a lot of people in the retail sector.
All right. What about Cracker Barrel? I haven't talked about that one in a while.
You know what's so funny? When I drove through Victorville, I saw the old logo on the sign. I couldn't believe it. I'm going, oh my gosh, they very quickly shifted back. You know, Cracker Barrel ended up getting in this political vortex of logo changes and all this stuff. I think with a company like that where they're trying to reposition themselves and forgetting the logo stuff, but just looking at what happens there. But I know that people who go there love those places for the food and they love the atmosphere. I would wait and see. But hey, real quick, while we're talking about retailers, let's also talk about restaurants. In Vegas right now, all this talk about a slowdown there. Let me just tell you that the restaurants that I go to in Vegas are busy. They're hard to get into. And a lot of them are at all levels for kids, for the adults, and the high-end places. So, again, I think the restaurants could have a very good holiday season.
All right, we're going to get a look at Beverly Hills restaurants later, Ken. So
yes, we are,
looking forward to pumping up the economy of Beverly Hills again this evening. Fantastic, Ken. Thank you very much for that great assessment, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again in the 6 o'clock hour here on Winning with Winans on 790 KABC. Top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, President and Chief Investment Officer, Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com. Ken, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Time to lay it on thick. Record highs across the board today to kick off the new week. The Dow 337 points at 47,545. The S&P 500 up 83 and has cracked 6,800 for the first time, closing at 6,875. And the NASDAQ up 433 points, settling at 23,637. Record highs across the board for the major averages. The yield in the 10-year note is back below 4%, now 3.98%. Looks like Wall Street is upbeat. It's kicking off this big week where the Federal Reserve will meet and then announce a decision on interest rates, and it's widely expected that rates will be coming down by another quarter percentage point for the benchmark Fed funds rate, which impacts business and consumer borrowing costs in the form of the prime lending rate. And we also have big tech earnings, as we just discussed, with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. We'll be picking up the conversation again this evening in the 6 o'clock hour. Also, President Trump will be meeting with the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, and we'll be talking about that. And we'll talk about it with China expert Gordon Chang coming up here in the next half hour. NVIDIA at a record high today at more than 5 at 191 and change. Apple up nearly 6 at 268 and change. Broadcom up nearly 8 at 362.05. Taking a look at the cryptos now, we see a rebound here to kick off the new week. Bitcoin got back up to around 115,000, and we'll talk cryptos in more detail coming up here in the next half hour with Jason Nelson from Decrypt Media. Bitcoin right now pulling back about 400, back to 114,510. Ethereum down 3 at 4,130. Yep, back above 4,100 here. And we see Solana just shy of 200. Doge at the moment at 20 cents. Analog gold still hovering above 4,000. In fact, at 4,130 here at the moment. Looks like gold is actually at 4,008 here at the moment. We see silver is still under pressure from its recent record high at around just below $47 an ounce. And looks like platinum now hovering just below 1,600 at 1,582.90. And now the latest news on 790 KBC.
Start your day with America in the Morning.
I'm John Trout, your host.
From breaking news.
The U.S. Supreme Court with rulings. Shifting gears, Apple has released a new iPhone. Here's the Wednesday Business Report. It's far from a seller's market.
To politics and entertainment.
Moving into scary movie season, so why not another Conjuring movie? Shifting gears, Powerball jackpot is now the third largest ever in history.
Live long and prosper.
America in the Morning.
Fresh each day.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. The stock market today cheering the latest news as it relates to U.S. and China trade. Promising signs that a U.S.-China trade deal will wrap up this week following President Trump's long-awaited meeting with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. President Trump received a royal welcome today in Japan, the latest leg of a 5-day Asia trip, which he hopes to cap with a deal on trade with the Chinese leader later this week. Following all of these developments very, very closely, delighted to say, joining us live now is China expert Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute Distinguished Fellow, author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, and on X at Gordon G. Chang. Also a world traveler, including a stop in Los Angeles this past week where he addressed the Lincoln Club in downtown Los Angeles, and it was an honor to meet you. Good afternoon, Gordon Chang.
Good afternoon, Frank Mottek. And by the way, meeting you was the highlight of a week in L.A., so thank you very much.
You are a fine gentleman, and likewise, it was such a thrill to meet you, and thank you so very much. And what a great presentation you made there before that distinguished audience. And take it from the top, so much to unpack here, which you, of course, did in front of the live audience there. Give us your impression of the latest news here with President Trump and the Chinese leader, looks like set to meet later this week.
Yeah, set to meet on Thursday, in southern South Korea. It looks like they're going to negotiate a one-year truce. That one-year truce ends just before the midterms. And the terms of it look like the United States will not impose the additional 100% tariff, and the Chinese will not impose their embargo on the export of rare earths to America. They probably will be buying soybeans. There will be discussions of fentanyl, and it looks like Presidents Trump and Xi are actually going to sign a TikTok deal. That's what we have been told. The details, I think, are still being worked out, so we will know Thursday what actually happens, and this is, of course, monumental.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek On Money, live on the air with China expert Gordon Chang. On the TikTok deal, this has been a long time coming here. Looks like, according to what the president said on Air Force One, on the way over to Asia over the weekend, he said that he could sign a final deal on TikTok as early as this Thursday. What do you think that deal will look like?
First of all, on data security, it appears that Oracle or some other American company will be handling the cloud storage. And that means China will not be able to steal American data through TikTok, as it has continually before this. On the algorithm, the curation algorithm, what determines what you see and what you don't see, It's not so clear, Frank. China will continue to own the algorithm. It will license it to an American company, TikTok, and American engineers will work on the algorithm. Whether that means China will be able to continue to use that to propagate malicious narratives, we just don't know. And that is one of those things that will only be known quite some time down the road as it actually works out in practice.
Very interesting. And of course, we heard earlier this year President Trump locking horns with the head of Intel, and then ultimately the U.S. government taking a stake in Intel. Interesting how that all played out. An Intel stock participated in the rally again today at just shy of $40 a share. What are your impressions of this big deal where all of us now are shareholders of Intel?
Yes, well, that's fascinating. In general, I don't think the United States should be taking stakes in private companies. There can be an exception in emergency situations, and clearly semiconductors, rare earths, and pharmaceuticals are emergency situations right now because we need to reduce our vulnerability. Because of this truce, Frank, the big issue is which country, China or the United States, uses this year better. I think it'll be the U.S. because of what President Trump has been doing on things like semiconductors, on rare earths. We had that deal with Australia a week ago when the Australian Prime Minister signed an $8.7 billion agreement with the U.S. And also the other thing is that I think China is going to use this year to become more trade dependent, in other words, more dependent on the U.S. So while we'll go in the right direction, I think China will go in the wrong direction, and that means this could be a very good year for America.
On the air live with China expert Gordon Chang. Speaking of tech, another interesting story that's come up in the last couple of days, a report that Chinese and Russian spies are reportedly waging sex warfare. That's what they're calling it here in the U.S. to steal Silicon Valley secrets, from marrying and having kids with their targets to organizing startup competitions. The operatives reportedly are using all kinds of methods to steal secrets here. What's your reaction to that report that came out in the last day or two?
Well, it was good that somebody put it all together, but this has been known for quite some time. Got to remember that the Ministry of State Security first contacted Eric Swalwell, not when he was on the House Intelligence Committee, where obviously he would be of great benefit for Beijing, but when he was on the City Council of Dublin City, California. This is not to say that Swalwell did anything wrong. It is to say, however, that China's efforts to penetrate the American political system are comprehensive, because Swalwell could not have been the only person being groomed. There must be dozens, if not hundreds, of Swalwells in our country. And that shows you just that China's comprehensive program is going after all of our politicians, all of our institutions, everything in the United States from top to bottom.
Something that was brought up at your recent appearance here in Los Angeles, Chinese police stations in the United States. So where do things stand with that?
The Daily Caller and the New York Post report that there are 7 to 9 remaining police stations. The FBI closed one down in Chinatown in New York 2 years ago, but still, these other stations are still existing. And the question is, why isn't the U.S. going after them? Maybe we're trying to watch and see what they do, but clearly at some point we need to close these stations because they're not only a violation of American sovereignty, but they're also committing crimes on American soil, as Ministry of State Security agents use them to coerce and surveil American citizens and others on American soil legally.
While all of this is going on, in another part of the world, we're watching U.S. military moves in the Caribbean, with Venezuela in focus, and Venezuela, a big trading partner with China. We have the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, heading to the Caribbean, and other military equipment reportedly being moved into that region for possible action against Venezuela. What's your impression of what's shaping up there?
Well, Venezuela is China's proxy, and Beijing has a very close relations with the regime of Nicolas Maduro. We have been taking out those drug boats in international water in the Caribbean. There are a lot of questions about legality, but I think that what the president is doing is correct, and I do think it's legal. We know that Maduro is the head of the cartel of the Suns, which is one of the world's biggest drug organizations, and we can't allow this to continue. We know that Venezuela has been in various ways trying to attack our sovereignty and actually was behind many of the caravans that were coming up through Central America into the United States. They were organized with Venezuelan money. So this is a regime that has malicious intent towards us, and that, I believe, gives President Trump more leeway to go after it.
We will continue to follow that very closely along with you and keep an open line to you, Gordon Chang, as we track all of the epic developments this week. Wish we had more time. As always, hope to see you back here in Los Angeles. I know many of our listeners would love to meet you, and hopefully we can organize something in your honor next time you come out this way, a book signing or some nice occasion where we can properly honor you and celebrate your appearances here. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
And Lydia and I would love to come to your station and to say hello to you and your staff. So, yes, thank you very, very much. That's something that we're absolutely going to have to do.
That's wonderful. Well, say hello at home and appreciate it very much. Gordon Chang, China expert, Gatestone Institute Distinguished Fellow, author of numerous books, including his latest Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Very active on X, too. And his X handle is Gordon G. Chang. Thank you very much for joining us live here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Everyone knows the legend of D.B. Cooper, but what if I told you there's an even better story out there? One with multiple aircraft hijackings, prison escapes, and so many twists and turns. I'm talking about the hit podcast American Skyjacker, which is now an action-packed documentary coming to theaters and streaming this fall. Find out more at www.americanskyjacker.com and listen to the bonus episode of the podcast on October 7th. American Skyjacker. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues 790 KBC. Record highs for the stock market across the board here today, with the Dow popping to 47,545 after a closing gain of 337 points. The S&P 500 of 83 to a record high close above 6,800 for the first time, 6,875, and the Nasdaq up 433 points to a new record high close, 23,637. Bitcoin also coming back to life as we start the new week. Bitcoin got up to around 115,000. Right now it's around 114,500 or so. It turns out October has historically been a strong month for Bitcoin. Following the cryptos closely and the latest gyrations, joining us live now is Jason Nelson, reporter at Decrypt Media at decrypt.co. Jason, thank you very much for joining us here, and give us your impressions here on the latest price action that we've seen to kick off the new week.
Well, Bitcoin recovered around 115,000 after plunging to 106,000 on October 10th and 11th. A lot of this stemmed from comments that the president made regarding new tariffs on China, which triggered a global sell-off. So it's interesting, though, that an analyst that we spoke with said that this wasn't retail investors. It was mostly people using leverage on centralized exchanges. So while it was a bloodbath, it wasn't a bloodbath for the entire market. It was just these particular investors trying to use leverage in order to fill their trades.
And a reminder that it goes up as well as goes down. You said down to around 106, but it did achieve a record high just in the last month or two, right? What was the record high for Bitcoin? Up around 124 or so, 126?
It reached 126 about around October 6th. It reached 126,000. That was the most recent all-time high. October, like you said, is traditionally seen as an up month, but when you have volatility and unforeseen circumstances that can turn around. For example, with this last liquidation, it was 19 billion in crypto positions were liquidated, and that's 16 billion long positions were liquidated in a single day, and that was all on fear of new tariffs.
All right, it's a lot more fun when it goes up. That's for sure. We hear about it when it goes down. What about Ethereum? You have to have a strong stomach for that one, too. Cracked below 4,000, right? And is now back above 4,100 here at last check.
Right. Well, Ethereum's doing well because there's a lot more action as far as Ethereum treasuries right now. For example, the Beyond Meat investors have been loading up on Ethereum recently, which has really helped the price rebound from the sell-off earlier this month.
That's interesting. So companies with these digital asset treasuries, is that a situation like that that you're describing here with this one, or and what about these DATs?
Well, that is what we're describing here. You have it's not just it started with Bitcoin where where companies and were loading up on Bitcoin, but now that the market is becoming more widely accepted, you're seeing Ethereum treasuries, XRP treasuries, TRX treasuries, that's Tron. So it could be anything. There's even WorldCoin treasuries, the cryptocurrency co-founded by Sam Altman.
Very interesting. And it's been a while since we chatted behind live microphones. Since the pardoning, right, of the Binance guy, Changpeng CZ Zhao in Washington. Looks like they're going to put a statue up for him.
Yeah, when I was a little shocked when I saw that one too. It's crypto does tend to bring out some eccentric individuals, and what we have here is a group of people who are saying they're going to put up a gold-plated statue of CZ in the Capitol. Why they'd want to do that, I can't answer, unfortunately. But there was a lot of excitement when the pardoning of CZ was announced. And a lot of people, it was taken by surprise because CZ isn't in prison. But it was just that he is now cleared of his charges. The particulars of how that came together are still coming together, but there's a lot of excitement in Binance ecosystem. There's even meme coins related to Trump and to CZ that have pumped on the news. So there's a lot of excitement going on right there.
And a lot of money flowing. That's interesting. What about on the ETF front? Any new ETFs are related to crypto this week?
Well, it's interesting because there's actually going to be new ETFs trading in the U.S. for Solana, Litecoin, and Hedera. Now, Solana has a massive community, and so does Litecoin, but Litecoin hasn't really been considered one of the top 5 cryptocurrencies for some time, but its community has remained strong as far as the people who support it. So the fact that there are ETFs related to it coming out is surprising, but not really when you consider how many people still consider Litecoin the silver to Bitcoin's gold.
That is very interesting. Well, thanks for highlighting that. We'll look for the Solana, Litecoin, and Hedera ETFs to begin trading this week, as you reported on Decrypt Media. And what about Argentina getting attention for stablecoin use? What's happening there?
Well, now that it appears that President Milei is being won his election, there is more movement in the stablecoin space, but there was more movement in the stablecoin space even before that, because along with the crash that happened, the one thing that did seem to stay relatively steady was the stablecoin market, which for a point made up about 30% of the crypto transactions. And then you also have other groups moving into stablecoins, like Zelle is going to be making a platform for stablecoins for international payments. And Coinbase is working with Citigroup on stablecoins. So a lot of action is going on in the stablecoin market. And then that's just one of the most recent examples.
All right. And with President Trump getting set to meet with the Chinese leader, what about China and crypto? Where do we stand there?
Well, China's People's Bank reaffirmed its ban on private cryptocurrencies, but they're still working on some type of digital currency for government use, national use. So while they're still scrutinizing individuals' mining and use of cryptocurrency, China hasn't shied away from digital assets. as a whole.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Jason, for hitting on all the important points here as we continue to follow crypto closely with you, and we'll continue to follow you on X as well. Jason Nelson, reporter at Decrypt Media at decrypt.co. That's their website. Jason, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Coming up next, stay tuned for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back at 6 o'clock this evening for Winning with WINANS with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. And I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. The stock market will be kicking off tomorrow morning at record highs. Stay tuned.
Start your day with America in the Morning.
I'm John Trout, your host.
From breaking news.
The U.S. Supreme Court with rulings. Shifting gears, Apple has released a new iPhone. Here's the Wednesday business report. It's far from a seller's market.
To politics and entertainment.
Moving into scary movie season, so why not another Conjuring movie? Shifting gears, Powerball jackpot is now the third largest ever in history.
Live long and prosper.
America in the Morning.
Fresh each day.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.